Just want to say welcome. My name is Caroline and want to welcome people to Caroline's Corner. And it's a safe place. The intention is to create a safe place for conversations. And my intention is to create that space where there's unique conversations with people who genuinely want to find meaning in their lives, in life, and want to share it worldwide. So I get to meet amazing people and be part of meaningful conversations, which for me is a very different energy and a very different experience. Just an overview, I am practicing as a therapist now again, and been rocking around that for about 20 years. And there's a certain gentleman I'll introduce in a while who has been by my side in many different roles. And I've also I've been the founder of an organization where there was mental health and suicide, and that was looked at, challenged, and programs were created. I was the CEO for a period of time at the organization as well. I got to facilitate Maynooth, which is Foundation and Counselling Skills, for 11 years. I loved it, absolutely loved it. And in my work over the years, I got mentoring and training with Social Entrepreneur Ireland and the Iris O'Brien Foundation. And along the way, worked with Amnesty for 5 years, taking on mental health as a human rights issue. And then many, many years ago, with a beautiful friend of mine who isn't physically here anymore, I got to coordinate No Panic, which is for people with quite acute anxiety. It was telephone based. So that's me so far. I've obviously a different path now, different work. But what we do here is in Caroline's Corner, we get to meet wonderful people, and I feel very privileged and very blessed to welcome today Ger Murphy. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Caroline, and thank you for inviting me on to Caroline's Corner.
Such a pleasure. And like that, Ger, before and as we were chatting, I just letting it unfold. I said to life, said to John and to myself, just to trust, and I've asked for guidance and direction, and just allow a beautiful conversation to take place. Are you up for it?
Absolutely. Let's go.
So would you like to give in whatever way, let's say we go with whatever pace, whatever flow? There's no formula for this. This is an authentic conversation.
Okay, how do I introduce myself? I'm a man. I'm in my 60s. I'm a husband and a dad and a granddad and a bit of a farmer and a psychotherapist. And I've been working in psychotherapy for about 40 years, from having trained in London in the early 80s and gone on and run a psychotherapy institute, the Institute of Creative Counselling in Dunleary for 25 years, and ran a psychotherapy training. And I see people on a one-to-one basis for supervision, for psychotherapy, for conversation. Like you're saying, I love conversation. I think it's a kind of it's an art form that's probably a bit underrated, because it's like something about how neither of us know in advance what's going to be revealed in a real conversation, rather than just telling a kind of a set picture, but as it's revelatory to both of us. So I love that. So that's who I am.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And one of the things we do at the beginning of a conversation, Ger, we have 4 questions, but before that, for me, that many years ago, and when I think back, I don't even know how long, will it be 15 years ago, Ger? Easily. And I was a facilitator for Maynooth University, and I was doing, facilitating the course. And at the time, the organisation that I'd chosen to set up with the support and love of my husband and my soulmate and my family, I said to the guys in Maynooth, I said, this isn't for the faint-hearted, I'm looking for somebody to help me in supervision, so somebody that could help me around the business end, the heart end, and also how to manage it. Then you have the whole growing of an organization and all that involves. And Charlotte Benson at the time was the supervisor, group supervisor up there. And I remember saying to Charlotte, I need someone that I can go and help me to hold what is growing at this moment in time. And lo and behold, Mr. Ger Murphy arrives into my life. So a blessing.
Yeah.
And for me as well, particularly Ger, in the last 3 years, your support and your love and your kindness has been phenomenal, and your absolute willingness to bear witness to really, really devastation and pain. So I will always be grateful for that.
Oh, thank you, Caroline. And yes, it's been a good road we've been walking on for years. And like any roads, there are places which it's fairly more clear cut and easygoing, and there are places where it's awful and devastating, and we just walk along those roads together as best we can.
And you were willing to and are willing to, so thank you. So I'm going to I have 4 questions, if that's okay. Now, you decide the pace, and if you want to change the conversation and move or whatever way, I'm going with the flow. I'm going with that energy. How's that? Happy days. Okay. So, who is your hero?
That's a really interesting question. I mean, when I was thinking about this before we came on, I mean, I have a whole range of heroes, I would say, you know, from different walks of life, but just 2 came to mind, and they were like from very different worlds. What I mean, I love soccer, I love football.
Okay.
And I've been a Liverpool supporter for 50 years or so. And the current Liverpool manager, Jurgen Klopp, who's a German man, who is a very fine man, and an incredibly dedicated, diligent, but yet really passionate and joyful man. And that mixture between dedication and precision and joy are the 2 things that each time I see him on the telly or hear him being interviewed, it just makes me smile. Just that combination between passion and intensity, and then just free floating joy. It's lovely. Cool. So he's one, and the other, like right across the other side of the globe, as well as the sphere of influence, it was a man who's now dead called Ramana Maharshi, who was a spiritual teacher in India, and in southern India, and he taught mainly through silence. And basically he said to people most of the time, his only question was, who am I? And he would just keep coming back to the question of who am I? And in a very simple way, no dogma, no particular diatribes, but just coming back and dropping as many of the identities of who we're not.
Okay.
You know, letting those go. And he lived in a cave for 10 years and didn't talk to anybody. And then he came down. His mother came and found him. He went off and lived in the cave. His mother came and found him and said she'd cook for him. And he come down the mountain then, and
he came home.
Set up an ashram. But yeah, so Ramana Maharshi and Jurgen Klopp were the 2 people that were in my mind this morning as I.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. And what was your first job?
Yeah, I had a strange. I went to UCC and did sociology and psychology in UCC as a young. I was very young, and I came out of UCC, and I was still only 20. And I was looking around for a first job, and the first job I got was up in Dundalk. And I'd never been north of Dublin for a start off, but it was I had to buy my first car and drive to Dundalk. My first job, it was the late 70s, and they were just beginning to employ social workers. And I got a job as a social worker for the ISPCC Prevention of Cruelty to Children organization in Dundalk, covering 2.5 counties.
Wow.
For like around issues of child abuse and child neglect. But it was it was an overwhelming job. I mean, I'd get phone calls from, you know, a Garda sergeant in some part of West Cavan or Monaghan, you know, saying, you know, I've got 2 children here and they're started, you know, they're hungry, and how long will you be? So I'd have to drive up. I mean, it was before a lot of the social services, before TUSLA, before everything, before the HSE had service groups, and so you drive across, and then you'd have to bring the kids to a district court sitting. You'd find a district court sitting somewhere and bring the kids with you to a district court sitting, and the judge, in between hearing ball tires allegations, in his coffee break, you'd bring the kids into him in his chamber, and he'd listen, and I mean, God, when I think about it now, he'd make an order to commit those children to a residential home until they were 16. I mean, needless to say, I didn't last too long in that job. No. I mean, my health, I mean, the overwhelming trauma of that was very intense.
And at 20 years of age.
Yeah, exactly. So that was, it was strange. I mean, I knew I needed more support, and I needed to find psychotherapy. I needed to find some way of, because it was you know, the distress and the trauma was coming through my body. I mean, I got stomach pains and all of that, you know. So I wasn't able to do it for very long. So I needed to change job, but I stayed within that field. But that was my very first job. It was very,
very, very overwhelming. Thank you, Ger. Thank you so much. And can I ask you one thing you would say to your younger self, young Ger?
I think I would say to him, we'll get through this together.
Yeah.
You know, we will come out the other end of this. I mean, I often do speak to the younger self in myself. I had a lovely childhood. I grew up in rural Cork and Carrigaline, and grew up on a farm and in a loving family. But I had an experience where I woke up at about 9. I woke up one night in the middle of the night, and I walked out into the corridor, and I saw my father dead in the next bedroom. And that, I mean, that was like so that younger self didn't know for a long time it would be okay. You know, so that's the statement that I would make to him, because that was overwhelming, and that was very traumatizing and rigidifying. I became very, very, very stuck in that for a long time. You know, it affected
me. Gosh, and I just think at 9 years of age, and just you saying, you know, you're walking it with that young lad because he needs it.
He did, absolutely. And one of the things, you know this about me at this stage, Caroline, one of the things I love is poetry. And I'll say just a little poem around that experience.
Thank you.
The kiss of my father's shock. Sorry, before I started, there's 2 phrases in it that are in Irish, and some listeners may not know Irish. So
I don't.
Ag dullish dock means going in, and a mock means going out. That's the only 2 words. So the kiss of my father's shock is bringing me all the way home. Ag dullish dock, ag dullish dock, ag dullish dock. Layer by layer, slate by shale, mining the difference towards the core, opening the door, finding his body dead on the floor. Amok, 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 no more, no more, no more. Was it here I grew cold more quickly? You don't have to die for rigor mortis to set in. I was afraid to touch in case I'd be entombed forever. And I was a little boy in slate and shale. Now bringing heir to relic is holy work. Ag stock, ag stock, stock. My mother tongue company on the road home.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ger. When would those words have come out in you? When did they decide to?
Oh, many years later, Caroline, I would say probably, I think I wrote those lines in about 2000 and maybe 15 years ago, you know, so maybe 40 years later. So
Yeah.
that little boy took a while to, you know, to be able to metabolize that experience. But yeah, it took time to come through that, you know.
Yeah, and for those words to come, which are
Yeah, yeah,
very, very meaningful.
yeah. It's like, and it's funny. It's like almost because there was that kind of shocking experience. It's funny. I've my life has drawn somewhat shocking experiences to me at different times, like that one of being totally overwhelmed in working with all these kids in a very unsupported environment. And it's funny, you know, I've gradually over the years begun to see shocks like that as like rough initiations. You know, they open us, they open me into, it's like they it's like it's a curtain that opens back in one of those, in those shock moments.
Yeah.
That curtain opens back and the world has changed. And the
Forever.
world, and okay, I can try to resist it or try to control it or whatever, but actually if I can actually treat them as initiations, as rites of passage, as like, okay, this I'm stepping into a different world.
Mm.
There have been a number of those in my life where there've been sudden moments of a shock,
Yeah.
something that was totally unexpected,
Yeah.
and it, of course, I freeze.
Mm.
If I have the, if I, and again, if I can talk to the boy, if I can talk to him that, you know, this might be an initiation into a whole other world that I haven't known before.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
that's how
Thank you. Mm.
that's how I yeah that's how I've gradually become to be able to meet change in a way
Mm.
in my life.
And I'm very taken by, and I know yourself and myself, that noetic, the more than in life, is an area we tap into, and I know we'll chat some more about it. And it's got that emptiness is full of everything. I'm very struck by the relationship you have with that boy. It's a
Mm,
very beautiful for a little boy to walk in and see his father dead. I don't know what that's like to
mm,
see your
mm,
father dead, but the relationship you have with him now,
mm, mm,
the two of you, it's so beautiful, just from what I've heard. And that piece when you said pull the curtain back,
mm.
and the initial of the not knowing, and that's like, that's life. There's no guarantees, there's no knowing. But I was very struck when I was with you when you pulled the curtain back, and obviously the threshold, which
Yeah,
John O'Donoghue I'd be big into, and
absolutely.
it's that you're going anyway.
Yeah,
But I was
exactly.
very, very struck how you described that for you.
Thank you. Because
Mm.
it's like, and again, yeah, as you say, John O'Donoghue, I mean, his piece about meeting those thresholds with
Mm.
reverence, like
Mm.
being reverent to those moments rather than recoil. And of course, recoil will happen and
Of course.
all of those, the body will have those responses, but actually also have some space for meeting those moments with the reverence that they deserve. You know, oh, wow, life is going to be different after this.
Yeah.
And I don't know how.
No. And that's the piece. That's the piece, isn't it? I don't know how. Or how I'll be in it.
Yeah, exactly. How I'll be in it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And just alongside that, if there was, and I know you mentioned, I listen to poetry all day. It's just so beautiful in all that pain and devastation and trauma. Just the words that they and how you described, and that's the bit I really can relate to. That they'll only come out when they're ready to come out. And there is a thing called time on this earth, but when it comes to your soul, it's like, nah, when they're ready, they'll come out. So I was very drawn by that. So the fourth question then is a line, a quote, or a statement that really stands out for you and why?
Ooh, 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 ooh. Well, there's probably lots of them. But I mean, I suppose more and more, especially as I age, the whole issue about my relationship to death becomes more of a prominent or present feature, not in a morbid way,
No.
but again I come back to the poetry always, and a poem by an American psychotherapist, Jennifer Wellwood, it speaks to me, and I'll say the why afterwards.
Thank you.
My friends, let's wake up. Let's stop pretending we don't know the deal here. Or if we haven't noticed, let's wake up and notice. It's simple. Everything that can be lost will be lost. How have we not noticed it for so long? Let's grieve our losses like ripe human beings. But let's not act so betrayed, so shocked, as if life had broken her secret promise to us. Impermanence is life's only promise, and she keeps it with ruthless impeccability. To a child, she seems cruel, but she is only fierce, and her fierceness is brimming with brilliance and precision. She removes all the unreal to show what is real. It's the wild dance. Let's take it. Let's stop trying to make deals for a safe passage. There isn't one anyway, and the price is too high. We're not children anymore. The true human being gives everything for what cannot be lost. Let's dance the wild dance of no hope. So why that touches me deeply is just I'm amazed in myself and in the world at how we can put ourselves in a kind of a spell, as if everything is going to go on wonderfully forever and ever and ever. And we tell ourselves this story, and we live within that story, and we're shocked when things that we didn't expect happen, as if they weren't going to. So that poem and Jennifer Wellwood's words, they're quite fierce. Quite fierce. There's no escaping. But there's also, I love the last line about let's dance this wild dance of no hope. It's like it's like not pretending, but not being morbid either, like taking life on in its own terms, with the kind of the joy and the passion that we can do, knowing that it's impermanent. So that touches me very deeply.
God, yeah, definitely food. I'll be letting that digest now. But it's real. It's real. It's real, yeah. And that it's like when you hear that, it's like, okay, where's it gonna go? How's it gonna impact on me? And what bit will I deny? What bit will I shut down? What bit will I turn away from? And that's how we rock. Yeah, that's how we
exactly.
do it.
And we often, I'm very interested in that. You know, she talks about the wild dance of no hope. It's really interesting. I mean, I believe in hope in the sense of, as an active thing of just of being involved, like hoping, like seeing hope as a verb. It's what we do. It's like it's getting up in the morning. It's putting out what we want to put out. It's being involved, and there's a hoping in that. But it's we can have this kind of a flimsy kind of optimism
Yeah.
that has this thing that everything will be all right, everything will
Mm.
be wonderful, and like that's kind of a waste of time, really.
Yeah, yeah, that you have, yeah, in all of these conversations. And again, if we look at why we're saying, and exactly for you, um, how you are choosing to find meaning in the experiences you have, you know, on a day to day, the people that life draw into you, the poetry, the music, the rhythms, whatever it's bringing in, and in each opportunity, it's like, okay,
Mm,
right, how do I find meaning in this? And I think what was really powerful, as you said, Ger, initially when something comes, a life experience, and if it's traumatic, absolutely, we shock, we freeze, we go into trauma, and there's no timeline. There's no timeline on
no.
this stuff. And I'm very struck about
Mm,
when the words came out from
mm,
that little boy.
mm,
And to
yeah,
me, that is so, so relevant that if you lean back, you know, you lean back and go, okay, this is going to unfold. And
yeah, yeah,
how can I, when I can, because sometimes you're on your knees and it's like, who gives a shit? And
yeah.
then other times. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not to exactly, and it's not to kind of sacralize it either, or make it sugary sweet or whatever, because it's fierce, and it's not as if it's all nicey, but it's like that we can come through. We can take these strong and difficult experiences, and we can actually, even if it's only part of us knows at the time of, this will change me,
Yeah.
rather than the idea, I'll never be as good as I was, or I'll never be the same again, and wanting, which actually says, I want what I had, I want to get back there. That's not going to happen.
No.
So, and this will change me, and being a participant in that change, so that I can actually say, okay, what can I make of this, and what how can I attribute meaning to this? How can I delve into this experience, whatever the experience is, that actually allows meaning to unfold.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's very powerful what you said there.
Mm,
Really is. And I was just thinking, and again, as I just sitting here, I just ask for direction and guidance and I lean into it. And I just thought there of my husband, John. I can hear him. And two things actually. Wayne Dyer, first of all, who has had a really huge influence on me, and particularly in the last 3 years, when John physically died, to him, to life, I said, right, you better put around me people who've gone ahead
mm,
and people who are here who know their shit
mm,
and they're going to hang around with me.
mm,
And one in
mm,
particular was Wayne
mm,
Dyer
mm,
for a number of reasons.
mm,
And I'm on that journey. But one of the things he said, if you knew who walked alongside you, you'd never be afraid again.
mm,
And it just made me think, just even from what you'd
mm,
said
mm,
there,
mm,
of it something John was passionate about. Absolutely. And he was a very grounded man. As I was saying, he went from the motor trade to becoming an acupuncture he had a great ability to lean back.
mm,
Didn't need to be out there, didn't need to be in the front, but had a fabulous wisdom. But his big piece was we stand on the shoulders of our ancestors.
mm,
And he was very, in the sense of, bit like the poem and all now, you know, get down off your
mm,
ego, get down off your high horse.
mm,
But if
mm,
you stand on the shoulders of your
mm,
ancestors,
mm,
why would you be afraid? Do you know,
mm.
in the sense of they've done death before, they've done life
Yeah,
before,
yeah,
and it's coming through you. And he
yeah,
always had a knowingness in him
yeah, yeah,
that
yeah,
these lads have done this before, so why would I attach fear to it? And
yeah.
he truly lived like that.
yeah, and that's inspiring, isn't it?
Huge.
Because it invites us to have a bigger picture and a bigger context, and to see ourselves as part of a lineage rather than. I think in a way some of the. I mean, I love the fact that we have, even in Ireland in the last 40 years, things like psychotherapy and counseling have come in much more,
Yeah,
but and then they have really helped people to work with trauma and help people to look at self-esteem and all those issues. But in a way they can also focus us so centrally in terms of me and
yeah,
our own development, and a kind of a narcissism in that,
yeah,
and that and actually moving us away, and then almost blaming ourselves as well if we haven't fixed it, if we haven't sorted it out, which is, it can come down like a rod to beat us. But actually, as you were saying and John was saying, seeing us in that lineage, seeing us on the shoulders of our ancestors, and the other piece of that's really being more and more useful for me is seeing ourselves as ancestors.
absolutely.
Like, what are we living as good ancestors? I mean, a lot of the indigenous peoples talk about, having a perspective that has 7 generations back and 7 generations forward, like having that as a way of making decisions, having that kind of perspective, because a lot of the time we have very short-term perspectives and
Yeah,
short-term decision making, whereas there's a much longer trajectory here that we're not. And I suppose that's what happens in trauma too. When we are hit by a trauma or an awful experience, not only are we thinking of our own lifetime, our perspective shrinks away down into like a very small moment. Like, as you and I know, I mean, we work with a lot of people who maybe would experience panic, for example,
yeah.
and fear. And like, often when people are talking to me about their fear, I mean, they're talking from a very small place. They're
Mhm.
talking from this little box of the head. They're not even in their whole body, never mind in on the shoulders of their ancestors,
Mhm.
or looking at the next generations. The world gets so small, and at the moment, I mean, it's great to have this technology to be able to have this conversation, Caroline,
Absolutely.
but the kind of the dependence on technology, and the separation, and the us leading very kind of individualized and closed down and virtual lives. I'm a bit worried about it, because I think there's such a need for community.
Yeah,
It's like, for having the generations together, for having different kind of groups of people, because with all these technologies, you can be with exactly the people you want all the time on
Mhm.
virtual, but you never have the kind of rough and tumble of having to rub up against
Yeah,
other people.
yeah.
And there's something really important about having that.
Hugely. And it's interesting, it's like that beautiful synchronicity. I was in Vienna over a week ago with our beautiful Khalil, and even that I got to Vienna in itself is it's a journey. And when we were there, we were talking about your ancestors and, the generations. And I just sat there and I went, oh shit. I said, I'm really, really, it's after really coming to me. Now it was there, but I said, we were talking about our ancestors and it's word of mouth. Yeah. And I agree, technology, the both sides of it and the yin and yang of everything in life, as we
Yeah.
know. So we were sitting there and I went, I get it. I get it. And I just in a moment got it. And I said, because Connor and Amy, I was saying last week, they're my biggest teachers on this earth. They really, really are. And I thought, my grandchildren, great grandchildren, and great great grandchildren, I said, I have an opportunity for a number of things, and in particular around their grandfather and great grandfather, I think of John. And it's like, I have an opportunity to navigate the actual his legacy,
Yes.
And I thought, wow, and through what we're doing, having meaningful conversations, and that
Mm,
the generations ahead,
mm,
with me, Connor, and Amy
mm,
in complete and utter trauma and devastation,
mm, mm,
see how we are trying to the best of our ability and choosing to evolve.
mm,
But I sat with Khalil and I went, oh my God, I said, I can be part of what's going to go ahead, and as opposed to, well, that's how it happened and this is how this
mm.
person left this
Yeah.
earth.
Yeah.
And that was very profound, rather than it being just
Yeah.
the ancestors behind. It's like,
Yeah.
but
Exactly.
I'm an ancestor.
You're exactly, we're ancestors
Yeah,
ourselves. We're
God.
ancestors ourselves, and for, yeah, and that's really useful,
Mm,
isn't it? Like,
huge.
and it's like it's an opportunity and it's a responsibility. It's kind of like
Absolutely,
it's the
I
two
have a
things.
responsibility.
Yeah,
That's what I thought.
it's like if
Yeah.
we really, it isn't about just satisfying ourselves. There
No.
is a lineage, there is a line, and for good or ill, we will have an effect. Do you know, it's like
Absolutely.
sometimes I think of that, like I can say to myself, okay, do you want to have an effect? So therefore you do something and you do the best you can. But the other side of that is like you can't avoid having an effect,
No.
because like whatever we do, I mean, that's the other thing that strikes me a lot, is like that how do we bring that down then into the very mundane? And for me, the idea of practice,
Yeah.
the idea of having practice, and that we can see that as a kind of a very esoteric thing or whatever, but that we all have practice. We all repeat things. Whether it is the routine that I do it in how I make the porridge in the morning,
Mm,
or whether it's my meditation, but it's like we all have practice. So we can choose what practices we do. We can actually, and those that is often for me the in-between place between, the big question of how do I influence
yeah.
the world, and how do I change things, and how do I act as a good ancestor, and our own petty small story, not petty, but precise and beautiful small story, is this idea of practice. I think it's vital.
And
And I
it's,
think,
yeah.
yeah,
Go
and I
on.
think in a way, some of the practices that we had in this country years ago, we've dropped away, and I'm not sure we've consciously chosen other practices
Mm.
to replace them very consciously.
And I think that's lovely. I was talking with Don Brennan last
Mm,
week, and we were saying, you've got the divine and the mundane, and the bridge is in the middle. So
yeah,
you've the divine, which is that knowingness we carry in us, that more than, because otherwise, I don't know how we get through what we get through, but that
yeah,
divine, and
yeah.
then you've the mundane, as they say. I love, even the enlightened has to do the washing,
Do the
so
laundry, yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
exactly. And I think like that, it's, as you say, because I'm really mindful of, check, and from working as a therapist, and it's I can say now it's good to be practicing again,
Mm,
and through Zoom,
mm, mm,
I
mm,
that's my,
mm,
I'm
mm,
enjoy, and
mm,
walk and talk,
mm, mm,
but I people will come, and the fix, but no one's broken, and
mm,
the
mm,
fear, the relationship people have with fear is phenomenal. We are, all of us, it's just, and it's exploring that. But like that, I don't want to be giving them a tick list of, do this and that, because I can't. I don't know what's going to work for someone else. But I do like that idea of, right, we've got this divine, this meaning. How do I then, the mundane, and it's not, that's just how it's described, of the
yeah,
day-to-day living.
yeah.
And I know I'd said last week, I get huge value, and it's evolved for me. John, I would have watched going out and saying hello to the day,
Mm,
as I said last week, and then he'd always say, all going well. I'd say good night to the day. He never made an assumption. So for me, and it really has really built something in me, that when I step out in the morning now, and I turn around and say, I'm going to let go and surrender the day to unfold of its own accord. And
yeah.
I just say, please direct me and please guide me. And then in the evening, and I found this for me, and it
mm,
doesn't mean this
mm,
is just
mm,
mine, this
mm,
is
mm,
mine. And in the evening, I surrender and let go of the day that
mm,
was.
mm, mm,
It, like what we're saying, I can't undo it. But if I
mm.
can go, right, I'm handing this back over, because the day is going to happen of its own accord, any shagging way.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I'm with that fully, Caroline. And the route into that for me, more and more over the years, is breath.
Yeah.
It's the breath. It's just, I mean, I'm only discovering it more and more, and in a deeper and deeper way. It's just like how if I can actually, I mean, we take thousands and thousands of breaths,
Mm.
and it's like if I can be conscious of even a few of them during my day, even a
Yeah.
few of those breaths during my day, and if I can actually just really be present to receive it, because it's such an energy source. Like we have this relationship where we take in all this free air,
Yeah.
and every time, and we're talking about having to be energy efficient and all the things, in climate change. But I mean, the energy that's available to us, and most of the time we don't breathe enough at all. We don't take advantage of what's there, because actually when I do breathe deeply, or breathe in some of the pranayama practices from yoga, etc.,
Mm-hmm.
it's like the kind of level of energy that comes into the body is just, and then of course in the evening time, breathing out more, and releasing and letting it go. It's just wonderful,
Yeah.
wonderful for
Yeah.
me. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And it's a bit like, we explore and we try different things, and it'll come to us eventually what rocks our boat. And I
yeah,
think I
yeah,
think it's the open-mindedness
yeah,
of, because I know we've five senses, but there's
mm,
this other whole part of us.
mm,
It's like these, our gut, our instinct, our intuition,
yeah,
our that noetic knowingness, that
yeah,
if you
yeah,
lean a little bit into that and
yeah,
trust a
yeah,
bit, you'd be
absolutely.
pleasantly surprised what's hanging out there.
Exactly, exactly. I remember one of my teachers just have this phrase. He said, you can do two things with problems. You can either solve them or dissolve them. And often we focus on the solving, and we think, and we kind of go round and round. We do the same kind of, like, as if we're trying to, as if you're sticking your tongue into a filling that's broken, and you go back to the same
Yeah,
place and the same thought all the time, trying to solve something. But we can, if we take a bigger perspective. I've
yeah.
been really fascinated lately by this new telescope that they've discovered, or that they've created, this Webb telescope. That has shown us like so many galaxies, way
Mm,
more than we ever even knew. And like, our focus is on one level of reality most of our time.
yeah,
And yet, things like quantum physics and all of these things, which have come in 100 years ago, and we still don't live as if those things are true, or if there's any reality in that. Like the idea that where you put your attention will have an effect on what happens. Just even as a
absolutely.
simple, is even as a simple idea.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yes.
do you know what? And I was reaching out to Robert. A lot of synchronicity going on here this morning, Mr. Murphy. So again, a couple of years ago, because of and how that when that trauma
Mm,
in it, there was a shutting down of
yeah,
survival, and then something was opening up like that. So it was happening, and I think
yeah,
that's what I got a sense of you. And it was like, I don't give a shit about this, just this earth bit stuff. It went like that as well.
yeah,
And
yeah.
you can't, that's gonna do its own thing. And one of the pieces, or the places, or the person, and I thank him, he's
Mm,
left this earth physically, Edgar Mitchell. So
mm,
I know for sure this is where I was to head. And I was listening on YouTube, he came up, and he was the sixth astronaut to go on
mm,
the moon.
mm, mm, mm,
And they're an astronaut, they're very left brain,
mm,
they're
mm,
training,
mm,
they're no messing about. It's not like in a taxi home at
mm,
night
mm,
time.
mm, mm,
So he was coming back, and there's a lovely little piece on himself sharing it. So he was coming back from the moon, and exactly like you said, he's in this little dot called Earth.
mm,
And in that moment, he understood for sure everything, everyone, all connected.
mm,
He just got that known, and he
mm,
came back down to earth. And someone like that carries a bit
mm,
of credibility for me. So he
yeah.
came back down, and 50 years ago, he set up the Institute of Noetic Science, right?
Yeah.
And it's really
Mm,
because I'm a member of it.
mm,
And
mm,
he took science and
mm,
spirituality
yeah. Yeah.
and blended them together
Yeah.
because he knew for sure exactly what you said, Ger.
Yeah.
When he was coming back, and he said other astronauts had the experience, they may not have shared it,
Mm,
but he said everything changed and he knew for sure. And the Institute of Noetic Science have the most
mm,
beautiful, like this
mm,
conversations, like what we're
yeah.
having, where both are blended. And there's
Yeah.
not this shut box of
Yeah. Yeah.
we on earth know what we're at. Do you know what
Yeah,
I mean?
exactly. And it's funny, and us Irish people, I think we've had a history of that.
Yeah.
We have known that there was, we've had a huge, deep experience, I think, of knowing that there was another world,
Very
and
much.
knowing that the veil at times was thin. And in a way, I think we've been blessed that we weren't too industrialized a society.
Yeah.
That we've something has stayed alive, something of that magical, soulful
Yeah.
experience of knowing, of living between these two worlds.
Yeah.
And it's so enriching to
Mm.
do that. It's like I've been looking a bit more at, it's like even looking at the Christian tradition, and going back and looking at the Aramaic um language, which was the original language that Jesus spoke of.
Okay.
And yeah, and like, so that what we get now, what we've got in the last 2000 years has been, it went to Hebrew, it went to Greek, it went to Latin, it went to English, and it came to the King James Bible. But actually, if you go right back to the beginning of the Aramaic, Yeshua, as his name was in the Aramaic, it's like the word for breath was the same word for spirit.
Wow. Yeah.
Do you know?
Mm-hmm.
It's like,
Mm-hmm.
so those two worlds that you're talking about.
Mm. And I love that the veil, it opens up. There's actually a beautiful kiddies movie, Coco. It's actually beautiful in Mexico. And when it opens up, but we have a lot of mystique and we have that magic. And I
Yeah,
think my sense is that people want to go back home to that.
they do absolutely. And I think we probably need a lot more rites of passage, and
Yeah,
remembering, and having ritual, community ritual, that allows people to just experience between those two worlds, and
yeah,
to actually have rites of passage become again a part of us, because our young people are creating rites of passage anyway,
yeah.
all over the place. I mean, because rites of passage usually you have to engage with a certain amount of risk and danger
Mm,
and to come through it. But actually, some of the risks and dangers that people, unfortunately, without, if there aren't any other, or there aren't elders holding them, they are pretty dangerous. The
yeah.
kind of rites of passage you see, the kind of festival experiences or drug experiences
Mm,
and danger experiences, they're very traumatic and painful, but people are searching. There's
yeah.
a deep search.
For them to go side by side. And I think like that, that's the bit. It's like there isn't a place where it's all nice and tidy and sorted.
Yeah,
It's like this is all going to walk side by
yeah,
side.
yeah,
You know, you've got that. I like. Oh God, I forget who said it. Not that we're human beings having a spiritual experience, we're
yeah,
spiritual beings having a human experience, and it's like this can actually rock together, and
yeah, yeah,
more people are realizing
yeah,
actually
absolutely.
this is stuff that can be done, and this
Mm,
is stuff we
mm.
can live.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I always come back to the simple practice. I mean,
Yeah,
so, going to counseling or psychotherapy can be a practice, but
yeah.
just practices like going into silence for a while. Like most people, if you ask them when was the last time they spent 2 days in silence, or even one day in silence, or even even an hour, it's it's like we don't
Doesn't
do it
exist.
anymore.
Yeah,
And in its places like it, I think silence is a wonderful thing for allowing us to experience the veil.
yeah.
Because if we keep on filling ourselves with food or entertainment or technology, we don't allow nature and the world to open.
No,
And I think the more we do that, the more, yeah, the more we
totally.
can be surprised by the beauty.
Totally. And would you believe, which is just amazing, we're just coming to the end of our beautiful conversation. And I could sit here just chatting with you. I have to say, I have not, no, I have not felt the time. I've just
No,
felt an
no,
energy, a
yeah,
flow.
absolutely,
So
absolutely.
how are you? How are you in this moment?
I'm very well. I'm energized by the conversation.
Yeah.
I'm moved by it because I think it's like holding that place between the expanse of what we're talking about, the more than, or the mystery, or as Van Morrison said, rest into the mystery,
Love it.
and the ordinary and the mundane. I think having conversation that can bridge that place or have us standing on that at that gap in a
Yeah.
way
Yeah.
is just a wonderful. Like I remember, I'm having a memory now, Caroline. I remember as a kid being really fascinated by the old men in the countryside. They would often stand with their two elbows on a gate,
Mm-hmm.
not looking at each other, just looking out into the middle distance. And I'd be kind of standing behind them sometimes. And the conversation might go, and then the conversation would fall away, and then it'd come back up again. And just that thing of looking out the window or
Yeah.
looking across the landscape. And it has the feeling of you and I sitting with our elbows on the gate.
Am I having a cigar?
Yeah, exactly. Get your cigar. Exactly.
and could and this is again no pressure. Would you like to finish up with a poem?
I would love to finish up with a poem. You know me.
Please. Love it.
This is by Rainer Maria Rilke, um, and it goes something like this. Spirit speaks as we begin, then walks with us out of the night. These are the words, the numinous words we hear before we begin. You, drawn forth by your senses, reach to the edge of your longing. Become my body, grow up and cover me completely. Let everything into you, beauty and terror. Remember, no feeling lasts forever. Nearby, let everything into you. Nearby is a land they call life. You will know it by its intensity. Take hold of my hand.
Wow. Wow. Thank
Let
you.
everything into us. I think that's what we're,
Hugely.
and holding the hand of the mystery.
Yeah. Well, that was just beautiful. Thank you so much for such a lovely, lovely conversation. And I have
Thank
no
you, Kat.
doubt you might pop in again another time.
Thank you. Absolutely.
Good,
Absolutely.
good, good.
Thanks a million. And it's been lovely arriving in Caroline's corner. I love the wallpaper.
It's deadly, isn't it? Well, you see, I have me crew, I have Connor and Amy, and I have instructions. So
Yeah.
I'm
Super.
doing what I'm told. Hold
Good,
on.
good.
So I'll just, as I say, lovely to see you, lovely to chat. And I know we'll talk again.